Osobola, yeah, 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 Osobola. Honor your vote.
A good afternoon and welcome to this live chat. We must apologize, we're a couple of minutes late, but yes, we do monitor whoever is online, and would like to specifically apologize to Masana, who has complained about the time that we've started. But we do notice some people are online. We've seen Kahim Kutesa, we've seen Severe Leos, and I can guarantee you that we are now ready to start. With me here in the studio is Dan Ruhweza, who is a law don at the Makerere University, and I also have Sarah Bireete, who is a director at the Center for Constitutional Governance. I hope I got that right. Yeah. I will start from Sarah Bireete. I was reading her bio. Very interesting that you joined the School of Law in 1995 when we were drafting this thing we call a constitution. Would that be right? What are your hopes? What were your hopes and aspirations as you entered law school then? What did you define as constitutionalism then?
Yeah, the Constitution gave some of us great false hope. And I'm sure I'm not alone, because at the time the Constitution was promulgated, as young people then, we thought we had arrived as a nation. We thought that the preamble of the Constitution would really come to pass, that we cannot go back into the turbulent political and constitutional instability, that we had achieved a durable national constitution that would usher this country and the future into prosperity. But the reverse, as we will come to see, the reverse is happening, the reverse has happened. But constitutionalism, I will summarize it in three aspects. One is a belief in the Constitution. And we do not have that culture yet. We have some sections of Ugandans that really believe in the Constitution, and largely the Constitution is considered as a lawyer's document. Other people do not pay attention to the Constitution. They do not even value owning it. But the most unfortunate or disheartening aspect is the leadership. They just take the Constitution as a mere piece of paper. So we do not have that belief. The second aspect of constitutionalism is recognition of the importance of the Constitution. And I believe we also do not have that. Because if we realized the recognition of the importance of the Constitution, we would not, for example, be having a private member's bill seeking to upset the basic structure of the Constitution. And the third aspect is having important organized actors. This includes political parties. This includes civil society, the broader civil society. This includes citizens that are ready to defend the Constitution. Even that aspect is lacking. So that's how I will summarize my introduction.
Dan Ruhweza, you joined law school a year after her, 1996, and you gave Uganda the word amicus. Everyone talked about amicus for some time. What, in your definition, is constitutionalism?
For me, I do not want to depart very much from what Sarah has said. Safe to say that constitutionalism is a culture. Yeah. It's a culture that is not grown in one day, but that people have specific aspirations which they seek to grow each and every day. Adding to what Sarah has said is the concept of the rule of law. The rule of law not ruled by law, right? That the people feel that in order to govern their affairs, they set in place laws which will bind each and every individual. Laws are not for some, and while the others can get away with it. Everybody is bound by that. The concept of good governance as well, that the leaders are very clear on what good governance is, and that whatever they do is for the interests of the greater majority and not for the select few. But in that culture as well is the idea that the people play an important role, like Sarah has said. They play an important role in each and everything they do. And our Constitution is very clear on that concept and talks about power belonging to the people. So the leaders should be seen to always seek and associate themselves or align themselves with the will of the people. But that does not mean that leaders shouldn't be giving guidance, because there is a reason as to why you get into a position of leadership, at least in the setting of where people know and have participated in choosing their leader. You know, where their consent on who should lead is not coerced, but where they actually participate and they know what they are doing at that time. So for me, constitutionalism is a culture. You see, the United Kingdom does not have a constitution, but there is a concept of constitutionalism, meaning that people respect the law, that they will not do anything, or that even when you do something ultra vires the law or outside the ambit of the law, you know very well that you are going to be called to book, all right? But that even when you're called to book, there will be systems in place that will protect you, even if you're an accused person. That an accusation does not mean you are guilty, all right? So I think there is that whole culture that grows with time, over time, that people begin to respect and adhere to and begin to own. Yes.
Sarah, someone would argue from the time you joined law school, which is surprisingly the year we got our constitution, that from then till now we have learned to behave a certain way. We have learned to vote every after 5 years for who will lead us, and that this document is also a very flexible document. We have amended it 4 times now. Yes. Why shouldn't we do it a 5th time? So someone would make the argument that perhaps there is some level of constitutionalism. That's not enough.
Yes, there's that argument that amending article, especially on Article 102B, that amending 120 is provided for by the Constitution. So what is the whole about it? Yes, paragraph 3 of the preamble provides for a stable and permanent constitution. So what does that mean? Durable national constitution. It means that provisions of law must be put to test. It means that you've put in place a permanent arrangement for Ugandans. And I will go back to Article 1, which provides for elections. Article 1, power belongs to the people. Normally, people misquote it and stop at that. They don't tell the people how power belongs to them. But Article 1 is very specific, that the people can only exercise their power through free and fair regular elections. The only aspect we have is regular. Free and fair are lacking. So if you have a third of the provision for people to exercise their power, so are people exercising their power or not? I think that's where I would start from. What we have in Uganda is just voting exercise. I know Kenya is facing the same situation. They are a bit more assertive as a people, and I'm sure they will overcome it. I don't know how the process is going. It was largely a boycott. But once you don't have free and fair elections, you have no democracy to talk about. We've been doing an analysis to try to quantify what kind of democracy we have in Uganda. And we have concluded, we are yet to release the results, and so we have concluded that Uganda is not a democracy. Basing on 6 aspects: the people, how they participate in elections, the institutions, can they promote democracy? They cannot. The behavior of leaders, the belief in constitutionalism, the economy. So we have concluded with the facts and figures that Uganda is not a democracy. So we have Article 1 is yet to be actualized after 22 years of the enactment of the Constitution.
Dr. Ruhweza, is it an overstretch to say Uganda is not a democracy? But in any case, is democracy and constitutionalism one and the same? Are they the same thing?
Well, you see, I personally am a person who loves figures and research, right? And I'll be very interested to read the findings that Sarah is talking about. then will I be able to give you a comment clearly in that respect. Because you see, when someone has dedicated time to make an analysis and is able to say, look, these are my yardsticks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In my view, therefore, based on the yardsticks I have made, based on the evidence and analysis that I have, this is my conclusion. It would be worth, so I can't rubbish what she has said, neither can I say that yes, you know. It would be good, and I think Sarah has now made us very interested in finding out this research that they have done, you know, and find out what are the challenges they found, who did they talk to, how did they talk to them, and so on. But that said, we cannot hide from the fact that democracy and constitutionalism work hand in hand. Democracy and constitutionalism work hand in hand. Because in order for you to have this culture called constitutionalism, there must be a way in which people choose to be bound, choose to govern their affairs. You see, constitution is about how people choose. If there is no aspect of people participation, you can't talk about democracy. You can't talk about constitutionalism. So, are people participating? Right? That's one thing. But more importantly, like Sarah has said, how are they participating? I can get your participation through coercion. I can get your participation through deceit. I can get your participation through fear. But even as in the Kenyan situation, the fact that someone has said, I will not participate, in my view, is also participation. Because you are saying, I'm not going to participate for these reasons. I do not want to sanction what I consider to be an illegality. All right? Of course, as an individual, I would want all Kenyans to vote. I need a stable Kenya for there to be a stable Uganda. You get it? So that the fact that some Kenyans have boycotted hurts me. Okay? And as a result, I cannot divorce democracy from constitutionalism.
Let's talk about constitutionalism in Uganda. And you live and breathe in Uganda. You
Yes.
you went to the Supreme Court.
Yes.
Argue about making elections free and fair, the point that
Yes.
she was making. They were regular and you argued about making them free and fair.
Yes.
What, in your view, has happened since then that has strengthened or weakened your argument before court for a democracy in Uganda?
Well, first of all, we need to appreciate what the court did. Right? I think the court, for the first time, by taking out this structural interdict, was a step in the right direction. So we have on record a court decision which says that certain things need to be done. It's kind of similar to what NASA is demanding, only that I probably have issue with the way the NASA demands are being made. Okay? Yes. Probably the proper forum should not be at IEBC, it should have been with the court itself for asking for maybe consequential orders. All right? But that in itself, for me, was a step in the right direction. And I know many Ugandans who have the same heart as I do know that we moved a step towards the right direction. I'm also cognizant of the fact that some changes may not happen overnight. That is why our argument before the Supreme Court was that an election or democracy itself is not an event, it's a process. Right? And therefore, even the conversations we are having right now, this is 2017. Our next elections are in 2021. It has to start now. All that you see happening, people being refused to access the electorate to consult, or some people being allowed, or there being selective consultations, all this goes to the heart of how are we performing. I personally think that we need to allow individuals, whether we agree with them or not, we need to allow them to participate in this process. Because it's only by an exchange of ideas that people make informed decisions. That's why we have the Access to Information Act. That's why our Constitution is saying that there shall be freedom of expression, freedom of association. Allow people to associate. Allow people to express themselves. Give them that opportunity so that individuals who have to make a decision will then be able to say, I do not agree with those who say Tojikwatako. I do agree with those who say tojikwatako. But that can only come where there's an informed, where there's information. And if you stifle information, then you are forcing people to begin thinking of alternative means. And that is why the Constitution in its preamble was very clear and said, we have a history. That history needs to be remembered in each and every decision we do, each and every decision we take as leaders, right? And so if we don't do what we need to do now, then the history that we are trying to run away from is going to come back to bite us in the most inconvenient places.
All right, a step in the right direction,
Yes.
you say. And we're going to very shortly play a clip from Robert Chirunda, who is the counsel that represented you at the court. And a step in the right direction is when Raphael Majezi stepped up and said, I think the Attorney General is being slow on constitutional amendments, and I think that this country deserves a constitutional amendment on its age limit. But also, borrowing from the Amicus Curie case, I think that we need an extension of time to 60 days for someone to file a presidential petition. Let's first hear what Robert has to respond to that particularly, and then we return to the studio.
I was extremely disappointed, not because the Honorable Majezi doesn't have the right to bring his bill. He has the legal right to do that, and that's not the issue. What disappointed me, as I believe is the case with many legal minds in this country, is the assertion that the bill is premised on that ruling, because in fact it is not. The only thing that even brings that bill close, so far as I have seen the bill, is the argument, and I think it's the only reason that he's using the Supreme Court argument, is the argument about the 60 days for a fresh election. Now, let's understand these two things carefully with their history. Number one, when we were considering to go to the court for the amicus application, it did not even come up once. It was never on anyone's mind. It was never the argument before the court. It was never the finding of the court that the age limit, one, has a problem that needs fixing, two, is related to the electoral cycle, three, should be fixed urgently. Those considerations were just not part of the discussion. So for one to come out and say, no, we are doing this because the court said lift the age limit, to put it mildly, is beyond dishonest. It's just wrong, because then you are leading the country by a lie, and that's unfair.
Of course, that's now Robert Chirunda, the counsel for amicus in the case before the Supreme Court for the electoral petition. I think it was Amama Mbabazi versus Yoweri Kaguta Museveni then, arguing that it is dishonest of Raphael Majezi to use what they had presented to the court and the orders that court gave them to generate a whole new bill. I want to first give Sarah a chance, who said she has a question for you, and then you will respond to that too.
Yes, my question to Doctor here is, there were parties to the Supreme Court petition. Civil society, we applied and were not allowed to join the petition. The Supreme Court made clear recommendations and instructed the person to implement the recommendation, who is the Attorney General, and gave him a time frame within which to implement, which is 2 years. And only 1 year has lapsed. So if a private member takes up the recommendations of the Supreme Court, first question, is it contempt of court? Second question, does this signify the collapse of the Attorney General's office, that they are incapable of carrying out the assignment? So should we then charge the Attorney General for failure to conduct the assignment of court, and maybe have him imprisonment also for contempt of court?
That is a good question. I personally agree with you. First of all, I agree with Robert Chirunda that Raphael Majezi,
yes.
He jumped the gun, right? It was, the Supreme Court was clear. The language it used was English language, right? The recommendations were easily understood by all of us, okay, on what the Attorney General needed to do and the time frame I would like to believe that the Attorney General understood the job he was supposed to do at the time he swore in that the office. Into office. So why not give the Attorney General that opportunity, right? I feel that this thing that Raphael Magezi did was almost to hijack a process. And it's unfortunate that even when the Speaker of Parliament had clearly ruled earlier that they need a full set of amendment proposals placed once before the court, before the Parliament, that instead, as if he was a stranger to the whole process, Magezi comes up and he's even allowed. I think that's why many of us are really frustrated, okay? As to whether we could go to the court and seek for contempt of court and so on, I think those possibilities remain, okay? But I think what's more fundamental is that we should have the Attorney General come out clearly, okay, on this process, because he is the eyes are all on him, okay? The amendment, the portfolio to present the amendments and any changes rests squarely on his shoulders. I think he should have been the one to tell Raphael Magezi, calm down. We are working on this process. We know if you have any concerns, let us harmonize them so that I present one bill, omnibus bill, as has been ruled by the Speaker. Finished. I don't think would be in all this mayhem right now, okay? Yes. But now what probably is going to happen is that after considering Majezi's amendment, then we shall consider the Attorney General's amendments, which is really a waste of public resources, in my view. A waste of time. You see, members of Parliament have been given 29 million shillings each. How many are they? 400 plus. 430. It means, yes, it means that when they go back and consider the Attorney General's omnibus bill or amendments, if he presents them anyway, and I hope he will, then they will still be sent back to the people. That means probably an extra amount of money, you know, and therefore that begs the question, what is so peculiar about this amendment? And it's for that reason that many of us seem to suggest that it seems this amendment seems to be targeted to achieve a specific end, which end probably would not have been achieved if we had it all in the omnibus bill. And as a result, that's why in my view, we have a lot of criticism coming in. Why now? Why not wait for the Attorney General, etc., etc.? So while I said that the Supreme Court decision was a step in the right direction, Professor Loka once wrote a paper, 1 step forward, 10 steps backwards. You know? And I would like to align my thoughts with him. Yeah.
That we took 10 steps backwards. I'm going to bring in Dr. Sarah Bireete here, but we're also loading another video from the former leader of opposition and now the Agago County MP, Ogenga Latigo, on his thoughts on what Raphael Majezi's bill is. But let's first get your thoughts. When finally the bill was tabled, immediately opposition MPs had been beaten, thrown out of parliament. What ran through your mind? You are a lawyer, you are also an activist. What ran through your mind? Yeah,
the tabling of the bill violated 2 procedural standards. One is the manner in which the bill has been tabled. It contradicts the provisions of Article 94, Clause 4 of the Constitution, that provide that a member moving a private member's bill shall be afforded reasonable assistance by the departments of government whose area of operation is affected by the bill. This bill affects the work of Electoral Commission, the work of Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, and the Office of the Attorney General. There is no evidence that these departments, and even the Law Reform Commission, which is mandated to review and provide for amendments of our laws, there is no evidence whatsoever that these 4 institutions of government have participated in the registration of the bill.
Mr. Raphael Magezi argues that in the 5 days granted to him, he consulted all the departments and brought a bill before Parliament.
They will appear to the committee. Yes. I'm sure they did not participate. The second violation is for the Office of the Attorney General specifically, because Clause D provides that the Office of the Attorney General shall afford the member moving a private member's bill professional assistance
in the drafting of the bill. I'm sure that the Attorney General did not delegate his functions to a private member as directed by Supreme Court. If he did, then Ugandans should demand for the closure of the office of the Attorney General. Yes.
Is it worthwhile for us to close the office?
Yes, because if you delegate your duties to a citizen, to a private member in Parliament, then why should we have an office of Attorney General provided for in the Constitution, and then you delegate your duties to a private member in the House?
Let's have that video of Professor Ogenga Latigo responding to Rafael Majezi's bill. And this response comes some few days after the bill was tabled. Let's first watch that and then get back to this conversation.
The Supreme Court was very clear. It made a directive to the Attorney General, set a deadline on the Attorney General. Majezi is not the Attorney General. Not at all. If government had brought it as a government bill, it would have been very legitimate because the Attorney General is part of government. But a private member cannot usurp the directive, the rights of the Attorney General under the Supreme Court directive. In fact, that is even undermining the authority of the Supreme Court.
All right, that was Professor Ogenga Latigo, a former leader of opposition and currently the Agago County MP, arguing that, again, Rafael Majezi's bill, 1, is dishonest, but also 2, usurps the role of the Attorney General, and 3, deserves legal action. And both of you are lawyers. What legal action can arise from someone usurping the roles of the Attorney General, or from someone doing the job of the Attorney General if they think that the Attorney General is not doing their work?
I think all this can be clearly avoided if the Speaker makes a simple decision to say, let's hold on. That's it. We don't have to run around in circles. I don't know what Sarah's views are, but in my view, tell the process to wait, all right? Because you see, part of constitutionalism and the concept of the rule of law is that we have to not forget about the concept of the separation of powers, the doctrine of separation of powers, all right? Now, in this case, and the reason why you have a lot of steam and pressure and a lot of, you know, a lot of charged comments is because we are dealing with a provision that is central to the Constitution. You know, what others say, the basic structure doctrine. That you tamper with this, it's like tampering with the foundation of a house, all right? And once that is gone, then what kind of constitution exactly do we have? Okay? So in my view, the doctrine of separation of powers is to the effect that each body, legislature, judiciary, and executive, have specific roles they play. Okay? Now, who is supposed to bring these amendments as ruled by the Supreme Court? It's very clear. Okay? We don't even need to go back to the Supreme Court to remind us again, right? What the Speaker should do to avoid wasting money, to avoid legal action. And by the way, your question is even superseded by events, because almost each and every day I hear that a case has been filed. Okay? Different people are filing different motions before the Constitutional Court and the High Court, challenging everything that has been done. They are challenging the way in which the bill was tabled. They are challenging in which the way in which the affairs were handled. They are challenging even the procedure. Okay? Should those MPs who were asked to leave the House have been kicked out the way they were? Is that what the rules of procedure say? My reading of the rules seems to indicate that they should not have come for the next sitting. All right? But there's some flaunting of the rules in my considered opinion. Now, all this can be sorted out once and for all by the Speaker, the Right Honorable Rebecca Kadaga, saying, guys, let's chill. Let's put a halt to this process. We are rushing no one. We are rushing nowhere. The Attorney General is coming to present. Let's merge all this so that we handle it once and for all. Why are we wasting time, money, resources on this process? in my view, that would be the most cost-effective way to handle it.
And now, the crux of this argument, can a constitution be amended? And who takes the authority to amend it? Is it the government? Is it the people? Sarah Bireete, what's your argument there? Who should amend it? Because if you suggest the Attorney General, then it means that the government has the role to amend the Constitution.
I will first briefly go back to the process in which this Constitution was enacted. The terms of reference to the Odoch Commission had two key fundamentals. One is to ensure that a constitution represents people's views, wishes, aspirations, and values. The second fundamental was put in place a mechanism for peaceful handover of political power.
Yes.
These were the two basic fundamentals on which this constitution was enacted. And it took us time. The CS sat for 2 years.
Yes.
And before 2 years, the Odoch Commission gathered views from every sub-county. And that's why paragraph 3 of the preamble emphasizes the durable and permanent constitution. It is not a charitable remark in a constitution. So based on that, and to see that, for example, if term limits were done away with, we are now removing the final safeguard for peaceful handover of power.
Yes.
So it means completely doing away with the 1995 Constitution consensus. It means we are as good as having no constitution. And Ugandans should be aware of that. Once we don't have a mechanism for peaceful handover of power, all 3 times the Supreme Court has ruled that we are incapable of holding free and fair elections on 3 occasions under this constitution. So if you don't have free and fair elections, you don't have term limits, you don't have age limits, we have no constitution. That is the first point. But the second point, who should amend the constitution? Chapter 18 provides for how the constitution can be amended. The first is through parliament. That is 2/3 majority voting yes. The second one is through a referendum. Those are for the entrenched articles. And the third provision is through district councils. But also we have Article 255 that provides for citizens to demand fair referendum on any subject matter in any part, either the whole country or any part of the country. And the results of the referendum are binding on all institutions of Uganda and all citizens of the country. So those are the 4 mechanisms under which a constitution can be amended. But if you look at Article 94, it anticipated that a member can move a motion seeking to amend the constitution. But it did not make it charitable either. It provided for the steps a member should go through. And these steps have not been followed. Yes.
Well, we have some people agreeing with you on the screen, and if we could just pick some of our online comments. I see some here saying if Amia Majezi took over the role of the Attorney General, then the Attorney General's office should be closed. Someone is like agreeing with you. I don't know how big the padlock will be to close it. The judicial, legislature, and executive all have specific roles that they have to play in the Constitution. I see here Essie saying all the drama that's taking place with this bill could be sorted if the Speaker made the decision to wait. That's Dan's argument, making us wait for the age limit. There's those who say, people of Igara East might say, we need this age limit discussed now, where Rafael Majezi comes from.
They are collecting signatures.
But I wanted to get to another part of this argument about constitutionalism and democracy. If some functions of democracy and constitutionalism fail, does it mean that the whole constitution in general has failed? Does it mean that the living body of the constitution has failed?
Well, I don't know to whom the question is directed.
Both of you, but let's start with you, considering that you're the one to speak up first.
Well, my view is that, you see, when you have a cancer, it does not kill you immediately. My father, may his soul rest in peace, died due to one of those cancers. But it didn't kill him immediately, right? Slowly but surely, his body kept on depreciating until we laid him to rest, and may his soul rest in peace. And I'm sorry to use that example, but that is how close I would like people to understand that what we are doing to this constitution. You know, today I was telling my students that it's not about having a personal vendetta against Majezi or His Excellency the President. No, we are talking about posterity. Posterity, and you see, I don't know if Ugandans have copies of this constitution, but if you read some of the principles here, recalling our history which has been characterized by political and constitutional instability. I teach constitutional history, all right? Today I was teaching the 1966 crisis and the subsequent cases of Grace Bingira, Expate Matovu, and others. You see, the culture of impunity that came as a result of the events in 1966 right through until we started having a lot of hope. At least in my view, we started having hope in 1986, right? Such that by the time this constitution in October 8th, 1995 was promulgated, Ugandans had expressed their will on where they wanted to go. But let me emphasize posterity, okay? But this document as it is now, this constitution, we have removed the core. We've removed the core. If a human being starts losing an arm, then a leg, then the heart starts failing, then the liver starts failing, then the key organs, you know, we are shutting down, you know, those who are in medicine, my friend Keith, I don't know if he's watching, those who are medical doctors know that as the body starts shutting down, the only thing that is left is the brain, and once the brain shuts down, that's it, okay? And so if you're to juxtapose with the constitution, look at the things we are doing. We have removed term limits. There is a move to remove age limits. And you know, the other day, my sister, Anite, because I consider her my sister because she's a fellow Ugandan, was saying we have the army. That statement alone is going to haunt her, probably for the rest of her life, because what she actually is saying, that we don't give a hoot about Article 1, okay? We are actually more interested in the fact that we have the army on our side, right? And yet the army is but a servant of the people, okay? Now, when you make such a statement, well knowing the kind of history that our nation, you're actually coercing consent. And that is the book that we know that Shokoro, Oloka, and others wrote on coercing consent. You're coercing consent by saying, we don't care what you do, what you say. The army is on our side. And the army will show you, just like the army showed the animals in Animal Farm. And that, I think, was a hugely misguided statement for which Anite should one time apologize and retract, okay? Otherwise, we shall hold her accountable tomorrow. We shall hold her accountable for setting in stage what Obote did in 1966, okay? Yes, you may argue that the army has always been part of us, but you know the history. That is why this constitution tried to absolve and kick out the things that the army could do by bringing in army members of parliament and providing for them to be there so that we do not resort to coups d'etat, right? So I don't know if I have answered your question at the end of the day, but hopefully in the many things...
somewhere in the long answer we have, we shall find one.
So I want to join in, but starting on where I stopped, on the army. I think what Anita said has come to pass. The age limit struggle has already claimed lives. The age limit struggle has people in hospitals. It started with the MPs. I think 2 of the MPs have become really completely disabled and they are being thrown out of the country. They are bedridden up to now. Honorable Nambos and Honorable Zake, they might never live normal lives again. So I think really the Anita statement was not far-fetched. I think she just spoke, maybe the Secretary of Government, on how far they could go to secure the removal of age limit.
And you remember the corroboration by Matia Kasaija.
Yes.
Say if if you start doing these things, they will kill you and so on, which I think are misguided comments.
But
not misguided comments. I think they let the cat out of the bag. Yeah. Because to me, the military siege around Parliament was the first step in overthrowing this constitution. And in my view, as somebody who works with Center for Constitutional Governance, this constitution is already abrogated. if you siege parliament, parliament is a center of people's power. You put parliament under military siege. You don't only stop on the outside, because the difference with 1966 and today is that 1966, they did not invade the chambers. Today, the chambers were invaded. MPs were brutalized by the army, by each face, by even unknown gangs operated by government. Because we have some members of police, some members of SFC, some members of FACE, and border 10. That's siege to the chambers of parliament. That is an overthrow of Article 1 of the Constitution.
I need us now, if I could just run the top of my head, the amendments we've done on our Constitution, the one on KCCA, we saw what happened, shifting the power from essentially the central government, and then we had squabbles in KCCA for all this long. But somehow now we seemingly have a Kampala that maybe has some little good things to it than the bad. The one on term limits, when we removed term limits, some people say that was the death of a peaceful transfer of power to date. The one that was defeated by Semogere's petition. Can one conclude that Uganda is cursed every time it touches its constitution? Because every time that we have amended the constitution, we've had a period of 1 or 2 years of complete mayhem.
Well, I am a person who is very careful about words. I do not want to think that my beautiful country is cursed. I just want, but nonetheless, I think your analysis shows why it's very inadvisable to just amend the constitution anyhow, right? Because you see, like we said in the beginning, constitutionalism is about people. Once you try to implant ideas, or to force, or to coerce, or to do things that the people don't agree with, you should expect a backlash. That is why in some circles we are being told that some consultations are no longer with people, but they are with already people who by and large are converted to the same ideological thinking as the person consulting them. And yet my understanding, the literal interpretation of the word to consult means to seek views. It doesn't matter whether the views augur well with you or not. Seek those views and come to parliament and be honest. Do not stage manage. I saw one MP stage managing on one of the television stations. Say, oh, yeah, we agree. You know, Ugandans are not stupid. Some of us are able to come here and speak, but there are a majority, the silent majority, who keep quiet. All right? But if you were to consult with them, they'll tell you that this is inadvisable. And let me put it clearly. I'm very sure that many Ugandans, many of my relatives have no problem and do appreciate what the NRM and President Museveni have done. I know many who do. But I also know that in a democracy, all right, in a free and democratic society, there are alternative views where people say, no, we don't agree with what has, while others may say we are going in the right direction, others say, no, we are not going in the right direction. Now, that said, if you insist on getting a coerced view of people's expression of their will, then you are like a man who is walking blindly, not knowing where he's going, but says, okay, after all, I'm walking. Okay?
You're moving from one step to another.
Moving from one step to another. Whether you're getting into a water or into a wild animal, you don't care. All right? But why don't you ask the people, what do they think? Okay? And then make the correct decision. Uganda has 40 million people. I cannot believe the argument that we can only have one individual who can make the right and best president. No. Yes, President Museveni may be a very good president who has moved on for all this period, but a time comes. And I know President Museveni knows this. I know those around him know this. At a time comes where we have to give, it's very uncomfortable, I know, but you have to give opportunity to other people to take on the mantle. That's why we have hurdles. Run as fast as you can, but hand it over to someone else. You can't even support the person. Nobody is saying that President Museveni should not be involved after he has handed over power. But our nation has not witnessed a peaceful handover of power. And that in itself, for me, is a risk. Okay? And I think many people know it, that this is a risk, and you cannot prolong the inevitable. Okay? Because the price we are going to pay will be high. All right? Our institutions should be given an opportunity to work. Allow Parliament to work. Allow these very articles. I know Sarah no longer thinks there is anything
Sarah
left.
says it's already
yeah,
abrogated.
but we can
It's
salvage.
no
We can salvage
what's left
the
of it.
Constitution. We can salvage what's left of it. In my view, it's not too late for us to do the right thing. It's never too late for us to do the right thing.
Sarah,
and your question,
yes.
I don't know if I have another one. Why is it that each time we touch the Constitution? I think Uganda, in my view, and with all due respect, we are yet to get true leaders. Because we cannot be cast to the extent that every leader must move by the bullet. We cannot tolerate this bullet democracy. And I don't think 9 or 10, I think 9 individuals that have led this country. We've had 9 presidents. I don't think that those are representative. I don't think that that sample is representative enough to say that we are therefore incapable of being a normal democratic country. But we are yet to get true leaders. Whereas most people thought that with Museveni and his slogans of fundamental change, we had somehow made progress. I think it was all sloganeering. Yeah.
All right, we will have to end this somewhere because we are really out of time. But final remarks, if we could do some final remarks. Dr. Daniel Ruhweza, if Raphael Majezi's bill succeeds and it's set up for perhaps a legal challenge, what would be some of the legal challenges to the way the Constitution is being amended currently?
Well, I think Sarah has already highlighted many of those views, and I do not want to repeat them. I think many people will challenge the process of presentation, the removal of members of parliament who should have been removed the next day, the fact that there was some contempt of court by the Supreme Court, which had given the specific instructions to the Attorney General, and then these instructions were instead hijacked or usurped by Raphael Majezi, etc., etc. I cannot honestly envisage what all Ugandans may do or not do as far as challenging the Constitution is concerned in the courts of law, but I do believe that more and more I think there are 2 more cases that are yet to be filed. I've got wind that 2 more cases are coming up. And more litigation is going to come up, which could all have been avoided if we had been patient and given the Attorney General an opportunity. I don't think the Attorney General is incompetent. I think he's a senior lawyer who can do the right thing. We are all here ready to assist. Okay? All the non-government organizations, all the interested groups are ready to submit proposals or have already submitted proposals. Remember, we had the Citizens Compact, which he could dig into and find out what can I and can't I pick up from this, all right? And there are other processes. If Ugandans really do feel it necessary, we can even have another constitutional review commission. I'm told that there was a suggestion and that names had been suggested by the Minister for Justice and Constitutional Affairs to the President, all right? So I don't see why the rush, the loss of funds that is going on, the tempers that are being are risen as a result of all this. I think we should give institutions like the Attorney General an opportunity to do what they should do. And I know these institutions have the requisite manpower to do so. If they lack it, I know there are individuals and institutions that can support the process.
Sarah Bireete, your final remarks in this?
My final remarks is that people are supreme, and the people must be listened to. But in the event that the manipulations we are witnessing against people's views prevail over the wishes and aspirations of the people, as Center for Constitutional Governance, we picked our letter from Electoral Commission authorizing us to start a referendum process. If this bill is passed in a manipulative manner, we shall take it to the second test of the people.
And if you're defeated at the people's level,
We shall
would you
see.
accept?
Let the people be
Part of
supreme.
democracy
No,
is
it's
accepting.
democracy. The people must be supreme in this process.
Yes.
That's the bottom line.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, thank you so much, audience, for joining us. Before we sign off, we could just say some of the things that the people have been saying. Someone here is saying this is a very severe question. I think that's Benja Edwards. Someone was asking, does the Constitution provide for 29 million shillings for the MPs consultations? Is it a one-off or is it an amendment that people can take from? I see also down here we have Eddie Billy saying we cannot be cast to the point that every leader must be removed by the bullet. That was Sarah's argument, the bullet, the gunpoint
that's our
democracy.
culture.
Yes. And then here someone is saying, apparently Evelyn Anita's "we have the army" statement is representative of what the government is already going to do, misusing the army. Thank you so much for those that have joined us online. We are so sorry that we couldn't continue this because we're out of time, but thank you so much for joining us. From me and from the team at SEDU, wish you a good afternoon.
Yeah, osobola. Yeah, osobola. Yeah, osobola. Yeah, osobola. Yeah.